Okay, so I am going to run through our first project for our first assignment. And once you get into this Psych 320 Research Methods 3 space, you should see a project or list of projects. And when you click the name of the project, in this case intro, or if you click start, it will take you to this intro project. And I deleted some time there. It takes about 30 seconds to open up a new project. Um, Now, a couple of things that are important about a project once you open it up. So you'll have this kind of pane over here on the right that has plots and packages and stuff. And this files is really important because this will have our assignments. And so the first week's assignment is this baby names project. Next week's will be this Pew survey. And so when you open those files up, that basically that will have the assignment in them. So let's go ahead and do that. I mean, probably the first thing that you'll do once you go into, intro, is just click where it says baby names. And that opens up this notebook. I wonder if I can see more. Yeah, if I hide the toolbar, I feel like a lot of this menu is taking up a lot of space here. But this baby names assignment is the first week's assignment, and I'll just take some time and work through it and show you how I want you to do it. So it says this is a notebook. You can create the slightly darker space below is called a chunk. And I say I want you to type the following line, library baby names. And so this baby names is a package. In this case, it has some data in it. We're also going to be using these two other packages, one called Tidyverse and one called WordCloud 2. Let me just show you, if you go over to the pane over here again and click on packages, a package in R is an add-on. And we'll be using packages every week. Usually there are two steps to use a package. One is you need to install the package. And so if you click install here and if you typed in baby names, you could install it. But I've already done that for you. So hopefully in all cases where we're using packages, I'm going to have done the first step and installed the package. What you need to do then is to load it into your analysis. And so you do that with this library command. I'm going to go ahead and it says type in library baby name. So I did that. And then it says press the little green arrow. So I'll go ahead and do that. And it should load in. It'll give you some messages. It might even give you some warning messages like it says some conflicts, but that's fine. Okay, then I scroll down and it says the package baby name says data on children's names from the Social Security Administration. Let's look at the data by just typing in baby names here. And one nice thing about RStudio is that it'll give you some guesses. So I type in the first part of baby names and then it will auto-complete that for me if I want it to. So I'm going to type in baby names to view it and then press the arrow again. And this shows a little piece of the data in a table. And you can see it's got the year, it goes all the way back to 1880. It's got the sex of the child, it's got the child's name, it's got how many children had that name, and the proportion here, this is in scientific notation, but that means, what is that, 0.0072. So less than 1% of girls were named Mary in 1880, according to this data. But I want you to notice it's actually got, it says 1 to 10 of 1,858,689. So it's a huge data set. It's got almost 2 million rows in this data. And so we can kind of scroll through here, but I'm only at row 10 now, I guess it's page 10, but I'm only a little bit of the way through. Another way to view it is with this view command. And what it's telling me to do is it says create a code chunk below by clicking the code menu up here and then insert chunk. And so notice it puts that little gray area there in for me. And then I can type in view, and it's capital V, and then baby names. And then I can hit the play button here. And it takes me to a new window. And what you can do is it made a tab. So here's the tab with the code in it in the notebook, and here's the tab with the data. And this shows all of the data. So I said that it had 2 million lines. So there I'm at line 10,000. And there's Cordelia, and there were 58 Cordelias in female babies in 1885. Okay, so it's just another way of looking at the data. It's kind of more of a spreadsheet format. And you can leave that in, or I think I'll just go ahead and close it. Okay, and as we go down, it says a final way to look at the data set that you should know is with glimpse. So I'm going to go ahead and create a chunk again. And this time it says use the insert R mini menu up here. So I can go there. And it does the same thing, but just wanted to show you a couple different ways to do it. And I can type glimpse and then baby names. And this is kind of more of a summary than the full data set. What it does is it shows you what variables are in it. So it has year and sex and name and the number and then the proportion of babies. So it's kind of just a nice way of getting an overview of the data set. It tells you how many observations, 1.8 million, there's 5 variables, and it tells you what the variable, and then it also tells you what the first, it looks like about 10 or so observations are in each variable. Okay, so then it says if you want to see the names for just 1 year, use filter. And so I'm going to go ahead and run that. And what it's doing is it's going to filter baby names for the year 1900. And so you can see now instead of 2 million rows, it has just 3,700. And so that's the number of babies in 1900 that it's got data on. But I want to show you a better way to do this. So I can use this filter the baby names data set for the year 1900. But there's a command that we're going to be using a lot in this class called a pipe. And it's this funny little, it's a percent and then a greater than and then a percent symbol. And what it says is I say when you see the pipe, think and then. So this is saying take baby names and then filter it for the year 1900. And when I run this, it actually does exactly the same thing as this. It's really just another way of writing this line here. I put baby names out of parentheses, put it on top, put the little pipe symbol, and then put filter, year equals 1900. That may not seem like a big deal right now, but once we get into more complicated commands, longer, we're going to have some commands that have, a dozen or more lines in it, and we'll use this little pipe symbol after every line. So I could add the pipe here and do another line below that. By the way, you can get that little shortcut to that pipe symbol. Instead of typing it percent greater than percent, you can just type, let's see, it's Command Shift M. And that'll put the, yeah, I say that up here, either Control Shift M or on my Mac, it's Command Shift M. But let's get rid of that. Okay. So the next thing, I don't think I ask you to type in anything here. I just tell you to run this. So I take baby names. I'm going to filter it for the year 1900. And then I'm going to pipe that into this top n, and it'll do whatever number you put in parentheses. It'll do the top 10 in this case, or it'll do the top 20 or whatever. And so I'm going to run that, and it's going to give me the top 10 names for the year 1900 by prop, which is the proportion of babies who had that name. So the top name in 1900 was Mary, and then Helen, and then John, etc. And one kind of weird thing about this is that the male and female names are separated. So let me see here. So let's run this one. Instead of doing the top 10 by proportion, we're going to do it by n, which is just the absolute number of kids. And then, oh, I know what I was going to say is that if you look at, like, it goes from 16,000 down to 6 and then back up to 9,000 because that's where the boys start. And then it goes down from there. And so it's not arranged correctly. It's not sorted correctly. So what I'm going to do is use this arrange command, and I'm going to arrange it by n. And then now, when we look at them, this is kind of weird again because it's from lowest to highest. It's in order, but it's lowest to highest. So now what I ask you to do here is I'm going to take this chunk and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it here. And then what it says is if you want to reverse the order, so instead of lowest to highest, I want highest to lowest, which seems like that would make sense, then all you got to do is put a minus sign in front of that n. So now when I do it, notice that it now makes sense, right? I've got 16,000 at the top and down to 4,000 at the bottom. Okay, so now it's got the girls and the boys mixed together. So if we want to only, let's say we only want to look at girl names, we can add another condition to filter. So I've got year equals, and notice I've got two equal signs, and you need that in this command. You're not setting year equal to 1900, you're testing whether the year is 1900. And when you're doing that, you use the two equal signs. So I'm going to say filter year is 1900, and then I'm going to put a comma there, and then the sex is F for female. And when you use numbers, you don't need quotes, but when you use letters like this, you often need to put them in quotes. And then I'm going to get all the top 10 baby girl names in 1900. And there you see it's just the girls and no boys anymore. Okay, and it says create a code chunk below and find the top 10 names for your sex in the year you were born. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm just going to copy this and then paste it down here. And I'm going to do, my birth year was 1966, and boy. And so those are the top 10 boy names. Almost 80,000 were named Michael. And I don't see Matthew did not make the top 10, but Michael, David, James, John, Robert, etc. And so you go ahead and put in whatever year and sex for yourself. Okay, so now we're going to introduce this mutate command, which is a really important command in R because it's what you use to create a new variable. So what this chunk does, so it takes baby names, it's going to filter it for the year, in this case, just like I did above, it's 1966 and male. But what I'm going to do to make this prop a little easier to read, I'm going to convert it from a proportion to a percentage. So instead of 0.0439, I want it to just say 4%. And so to do that, I mutate. The first word in the parentheses is the name of the new variable, so I'm going to call it percent. And then equals, and what is it going to be equal to? It's going to be equal to the prop variable times 100. and then I'm going to get the top 10 of those. And you'll see when I execute that, I've got this new mutated, a new variable, and instead of 0.0439, it's 4.39. And I want to do one other thing. Instead of just leaving it as prop times 100, I'm going to use this round command, and I'm going to round it. I'm going to round this prop times 100, and I'm going to round it to 1 digit. So what are you rounding? That's the first thing in parentheses, then the comma, and then how much are you rounding it to? I'm going to round it to 1 digit to the right of the decimal point. And then when I run that, that should look a little nicer. So there. So now I wanted to just show you this mutate command. We're going to be using this a lot. It's what you use to create new variables. And so we created this new variable called % based on this proportion, but it makes it a little easier to read. Here's another function called row number, and I'm basically taking the same command again, set of commands, baby names, filter 1966 and male. I'm going to mutate that %, and then I'm going to create another variable called rank that's set to the row number. Notice that I put some little annotations here. If you type in the £sign or the hashtag symbol, everything after that will be green, and it means that it's called a comment. So it won't run anything as if it was our code. It'll just ignore it. So I do that sometimes, where I'll have some descriptions of the commands over here, followed by that little £sign. So let's run that. And so notice now I've got the % column, and I've also got a rank. So the 7th most popular boy's name in 1966 was Mark. And it had 34,000, almost 35,000 boys, and it was almost 2% of boys were named Mark that year. Okay. And it says we can use this rank variable as a measure of the popularity of a particular name. So here's something else that we can do. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing as above. I'm going to do this 1966, pipe that. I'm going to mutate, get a row number. I'm going to mutate again and get that % variable. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter for the name Matthew. And I don't know where that was. It wasn't in the top 10. But it was somewhere after that, I assume, up to 4,500 and something. But I'm going to filter for that name, and when I run that, notice because I have this rank column, it will tell me what the rank of that name was. So my name that year was the 34th most popular boy's name, with about about half of 1% of boys that year, baby boys, were named Matthew. Okay, and it just says to try it with a few other names and sexes. So if you want to try some of your friends or whatever, and try, I'll show you. I just go ahead and copy and paste it down here, and then just change it. So I'll tell you, my sister was born in 1960. Female, and then changed the name to Anne, and her name was Anne spelled with an E. And so hers was the 88th most popular name that year. Maybe I'll do my daughter was born, let's do 1999, female, and her first name is Emma. And I'll run that. And she had the 17th most popular name that year, with 11,000 baby girls, for about half of 1% named Emma that year. Okay, so now I want to show you how to create a word cloud. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking baby names, I'm filtering it. In this case, I just picked a random year. I just picked 2015, and I want to get girls' names, let's say. This select command is something we haven't talked about. What it does is it will select just which variables you want to show. So we have year and sex and name, etc. And what I want to use for this word cloud function is just these two, name and n. So I'm going to select those two. This time I'm going to get the top 100, and I'm going to create a word cloud of 100 girls' names from 2015. And one of the things you notice is that it's too big. It says it's supposed to be 100 names, but I don't think that's nearly 100. That's maybe 25 or something. And it's because the font is too big. And I noticed this before, so I thought I'd show you how you can make it a different size. It's exactly the same as what I have up here. The only change is I put size equals 0.5. And I think it defaults to size equals 1. And so if we just make it a little smaller, I think it'll fit all the names in. Okay, so there's a real word cloud. It has all of the most popular girls' names from 2015. And actually, if you kind of hover over it, so Amelia, it says there were 9,795 baby girls named Amelia in 2015. Kennedy, 4,496, etc. And it looks like there's Emma. Wow, it looks like Emma might have been the most popular. Mia. So anyway, what I wanted to show you is that you can fiddle around with this. So that's kind of it's a word cloud. It's kind of an oval shape, but you can do different shapes like pentagon. You can set different colors. So basically all you're doing is you're adding extra little functions into this word cloud 2 parentheses. So we've got size equals 0.5, which we had before, and then we added shape equals pentagon and color equals pink. And I don't know. I'm not sure if that really looks like a pentagon, but it's pretty ugly anyway. But what I wanted you to do is just try out a couple of other ones. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and then paste it. I'm going to try some different shapes. Star, triangle, pentagon, diamond. Let's try a diamond. And then I'm going to replace pink with, let's say red. So I just wanted to show you can fiddle around with a couple of the parameters there and create different looking word clouds. Here's something else you can do. You can use different, it's called a WC theme, so word cloud theme, and you connect it with a plus sign. So I can do word cloud 2, size equals 0.5, and then word cloud theme, and then you could add, it can be 1, 2, or 3. I think there's only 3 themes. But here I have WC theme 2, and when I run that, you can see it's kind of slanted a little bit. It's the same shape word cloud, but now all of the names are kind of tilted at that kind of 45-degree angle. So now it says create a word cloud with a year and sex of your choice. So let's go ahead and copy this, paste, and it says a square shape and theme 1. So I'm going to change that to theme 1. And remember, the shape has to be in the parentheses. So I'm going to do shape equals, and then it has to be in quotes too, equals square. And let's do my 1966 boys, and then see what that looks like. Okay, So now I wanted to show you how to create some graphs other than word clouds. So what this first one does, it takes these baby names. I'm going to get Matthew, and then what I'm going to do is create a plot. And we're going to be using this ggplot package a lot. And the way ggplot works is you have to define these aesthetics. And that you use this abbreviation AES. And the aesthetics are things like the X and the Y axis. So I say ggplot, AES, and then X, I'm going to make year. So that I want year to be on the X axis, and I want prop, so it's a proportion of babies with that name, on the Y axis. And then I use this plus sign rather than the pipe here. So I have plus, and then I'm going to make a line graph. So it's geom line. So you don't have to do anything here, but that shows the popularity of the name Matthew over time, right? So for the first, what is that, almost 100 years, it basically hovered around 0, and then it really increased in popularity. This is around the time where I was born, 1960s, and then really peaked, it looks like, around 1980, and then has declined again since then. One thing that's weird about the graph is it's got these zigzags, and it took me a while to figure out what was going on there, but the reason is that you've got boys named Matthew, but it's including the girls in the plot. So every year it goes from however many boys were named Matthew all the way down to 0 for the girls, and then back up again. And so you get this you get this zigzagging back and forth. So the way to take care of that is to not just filter on the name Matthew, but also to filter on sex. And so I think this is just exactly the same as above here. It's only got this additional sex equals M. And now when I run that, that looks a lot better. So now it's a normal looking line graph. A couple of other changes I made here. So I wanted to use the percent instead of the proportion. We've got these funny 0.01, and I thought it would look nicer with percent. So I did this mutate command. And then the other thing I did is in this geom line, in parentheses, I put color equals blue. And so let's take a look at what that looks like. So now you've got the blue line instead of gray or whatever it was before. And then we've got percent here, 0, 1, 2, which is a little easier to read than 0.01 and 0.02. Okay, so then it says, just out of curiosity, I wanted to see if there were any girls named Matthew. I felt like looking at this graph here, I wasn't sure if it always went down exactly to 0, like right in here especially. It looks like it's maybe a little above the 0 line. So I was just kind of curious if there were any girls named Matthew. I don't think I've ever known a girl named Matthew, but I changed this from M to F, and I'm going to press play there, and you can see, at least in the 70s and 80s, there were a couple hundred girls named Matthew every year, which is really crazy. I don't know if that was real, or if maybe they were some kind of a coding error and they put girl instead of boy by accident. But apparently, at least what these data say is that there were a couple hundred girls named Matthew every year during the 70s and 80s. So I wanted to show you to do this with another one. This is my wife's name is Michelle with 1 L. And basically it's the same as above with Matthew, but now it says Michelle, and instead of male it says female. And you can see she was born in 1968. You can see that her name peaked right about at that time that she was born. If we look at, I think here I wanted to show you how you could do 2 people's names. And the key is when you do this filter, you use this symbol here, which is just it's a vertical line. It's kind of on the upper right of the keyboard. And and it stands for or. So if the name is Emma, which is, I have one daughter named Emma, another one named Julia, and so if the name is Emma or Julia, then include both of those, and then all the rest is the same. Oh no, sorry. The other difference is I'm going to make color equal name. So I'm going to have two different lines, and they're going to be two different colors, is what that's doing. So when I do that, it's just kind of interesting to see. So Emma was really popular 100 years ago, and then it declined and was very unpopular in the 60s, and then went back up again. And Julia is kind of similar, but a little less extreme. It was also popular a long time ago, and then declined, and then went back up again. And so what I wanted to show you was, so is it possible to guess the year someone was born by their name? And one way to do this is to get the peak year for that name. So what I'm going to do here is filter for a particular name, so Michelle and female, and then just get the top N. So I'm just going to get what was the top year for Michelle, is basically what this is doing. And you can see Michelle was #1 in popularity in 1968. So sorry, it wasn't the most popular name, but the most popular year for the name Michelle was 1968, and that is exactly the year that my wife was born. So I thought that was a good example. So we can try a couple of other names. So if we try Matthew, instead of just getting the top one, we can get the top 10 years for Matthew. So I'm going to get just Matthew names, make sure it's for boys, and then the top 10. And it should show me the top 10 years for the name Matthew. So the most popular year for Matthew was 1983, and all the other years are right around that time. So what I wanted to have you do is try a couple of names. So I'm going to copy that, paste it down here, and try a couple of names. Let's try Michael, and see when the most popular most popular years for Michael were. I don't know when Mike Havens was born. My guess is maybe around 1960 or so. And you can see the Michael was at its peak in the 60s, 50s, early 70s. So I think it's funny that you can kind of get a good sense of when someone was born just by knowing their name. If you try, let's try another name. Let's try, let's see, again, my sister. Let's make sure we change this to girl. And let's see when Anne was the most popular. Okay, so that definitely didn't work for her. So Anne was at its peak in the early 1900s, 1915 to 1920, around there. So I guess it doesn't always work. But it surprisingly often does. Okay, so I wanted to look at a couple of famous names and when they were popular. And so I thought I'd use Barack, which is a famous person's name, but not a very popular name, I wouldn't think. So if we filter on the name and do the ggplot for the years over time, just like we did above, we can see, it's kind of funny to look at it, because notice how it starts at like 2006 or 7. Because apparently nobody in the U.S. Social Security Administration, data was named Barack before 2007, and then after he became president in 2008 and 9, it peaked and then went back downhill again. And it was only there were, what is that, 60 or 70 people, boys. Well, no, I guess I didn't filter it by boy, but 60 or 70 people named Barack as babies in the year that he became president. Here's another thing. We could look at a couple of famous names at once. I thought I'd use some Disney names. So we have Ariel, Elsa, and Jasmine, kind of Disney, princess from movies. And we do the same thing as before, where we use that vertical line to include all of them, and then do color equals name, and create that line graph. And we can see here when Jasmine, let's see, when was that movie? In 1992. And you can see Jasmine had basically no names through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then it started increasing. It's interesting because it seems to me like it increased in popularity prior to the movie, because that's about, well, maybe not. That's about 1990 right there. So you can see there were some people named Jasmine, and then it really increased right about there, right about when the movie came out. Okay, so let's do this again. And what it says, copy and paste the chunk above, and then I want to filter for years only after 1980. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this line, filter name year greater than 1980. And then remember to put the pipe symbol in. And let's run it. Okay, so now we're kind of getting a better look at it. Okay, so that's the assignment. I'll have another video that describes this part of the assignment where you create your own notebook.